It's a warm welcome to Africa 360. We go across the continent for news and views you won't hear anywhere else with a distinctly African perspective. I'm Chris Maruleng. Join me on Africa 360. This week on Africa 360, we're joined by my colleague, guest anchor Duduzile Ramela. She'll be talking African literature and the art of storytelling, and she's joined by a special guest, pioneering crime fiction writer Angela Makholwa. And together, they'll delve into what makes a good book and what makes a distinctly African story. Join us as we go into the psyche of crime fiction.
Storytelling is a proud African tradition, and the continent's rich literary culture is no different. The father of African fiction, Chinua Achebe, was the first writer to place an African protagonist at the fore. His novel, Things Fall Apart, imagined life in pre-colonial Nigeria. Africa's first Nobel laureate, Wallace Yinka's poems and plays capture the triumph and turmoil of independence. While Kenya's Ngugi wa Thiong'o's satirical take on politics and society remains a vital voice. And political non-fiction continues to intrigue. But younger authors are also capturing a new narrative. Rising writers like Nigeria's Chimamanda Adichie grapple with a new African identity in the 21st century. Across the continent, Africa's story is certainly changing.
Across the continent, we're seeing enormous diversity in terms of output, in terms of genre. We're seeing everything from kind of revisiting earlier classic texts and ways of telling stories, to engagements with memory, and kind of playful narratives in terms of structure, but quite serious in terms of content. We're seeing a lot of crime fiction. We're seeing we're seeing enormous diversity, both at the level of what kinds of issues people are talking about.
While writing a book is already difficult, selling one may be even harder.
Someone once said, someone within the publishing industry, that we're a little bit like a venture capital company, because each little book we publish is a unique project that has to sort of make money on its own merit.
So what makes Angela Makholwa's perspective so unique?
I think there are two things. One is Angela herself. There are not a lot of young black female writers, certainly writing in the mass market genre or crime. To my knowledge, I think Angela is about the only black crime writer, sort of female author. So that was one thing. And secondly, just her stories are so unique. Her second book wasn't necessarily crime writing, but she writes about from a perspective of a young black woman living in an urban setting in all her books. And I think that is quite a unique voice.
Without a doubt, Africa has a rich legacy of storytelling, but the power of the book is often hampered by a poor reading culture. And as more young writers emerge, it's important to keep shelves like these well stocked to attract new readers. Lindsay Schutel, Johannesburg.
Hello and welcome. I'm Duduzile Ramela, your guest anchor on the special literary edition of Africa 360. Today we sit down and have a chat to Angela Makholwa, who's a renowned crime fiction writer. Her debut novel, Red Ink, is a gripping psychological thriller which was followed by 30th Candle, a story about friendships, betrayal, and women who commit sexual misdemeanors. Now this is her latest book, Black Widow Society, which is about women who craftfully deal with their philandering husbands. And it's this book that will be our focus today. The Black Widow Society. Will be sitting down with Angela Makholwa as she tells us a bit more about what went into the making of this thriller. Angela, welcome to Africa 360, and thank you so much for joining us and allowing us into your beautiful home.
Thank you for having me, Tutu.
Now tell us a bit more about the book, Black Widow Society.
Well, Black Widow Society, the title for the book was inspired by a series of events around 2007 here in South Africa. There were about 3 high-profile cases of black widows, women who had killed their husbands. And the first thing that you ask yourself is, why would somebody want to kill their husband? I mean, this is your spouse. You pledged undying love at some point. So those were the questions that first kind of framed the idea for me. And then my crime thriller cat was on, and I was thinking, well, this could actually make a great concept for a novel, a great premise for a novel. And so I came up with this idea of a group of women who form a secret society with the sole intention of eliminating their husbands. But you can't just be a member. There has to be certain criteria that you fulfill to be part of the society. And you know, to drive that kind of plot, I mean, obviously a lot of people would be like, oh my gosh, I mean, come on, what kind of sick concept is this? So I had to find a kind of moral frame that the founders of the society base everything on. So the moral frame for them is that, you know, the husbands should have done some kind of wrong that they refuse to address, you know, at some level. So it's philanderers, it's wife bashers, it's, you know, that is the kind of criteria. It's all kinds, yeah. So you have to prove that you're in a situation where you're feeling trapped, and you've tried to get out and you can't, and you've tried different means, you've tried divorce and so on, but you can't, the person doesn't want to divorce you and so on. And then this is your last resort.
What kind of research went into this? Were you watching the Crime and Investigation Network, or do you have a family member that you know about, you know, whose husband was philandering and was like, okay, let's write this book, buddy?
Oh my goodness, no. You know, I've had a lot of fun writing Black Widow Society. I know it's a strange thing to say, you know, given the premise for the book. But I think the thing is, you kind of explore, you know, the human psyche as a crime novelist. And so for me, I suppose the research, the fact that I probably studied psychology at varsity probably helped a lot. But other than that, of course, it's just reading up a lot on these cases of Black widows. I had to do a lot of that kind of research. And also, you know, when this society has gone on for 20 years undetected. So how did they do it? So I had to be very crafty and inventive in the methods of elimination. So I did a lot of kind of research on how, for instance, secret societies or terrorist groups even carry out their hits, because those are professional, you know, assassination organization, like professional assassins. So, you know, you use the methods that you read up on to kind of carry out some of the eliminations in the book. So it was interesting, but disturbing, I must say.
Why crime fiction?
I like the challenge of it, and I was always daunted, like, will I be able to pull off such a thing, you know, because it's leaving, every single chapter and every single page leaves pieces of the puzzle, and you as the reader have to assist in kind of following the trail and finding out where this is all leading to. And I think a good crime novel kind of keeps as much out of your range as a reader as possible, but at the same time while keeping you engaged. So that's very tricky. It's a tricky balance. So I thought, wow, if I could write a crime novel that does what I enjoy when I read a good crime fiction, then I'll be happy.
Now, why do you think that crime fiction is not so popular on the African continent?
Maybe it's because that people are focused on political, social, economic questions. People are focused on issues of identity. And then crime is also very uncomfortable. It's an uncomfortable genre to work with, because you have to kill off people, for one. And you have to be, it's up to you how graphic you have to be in carrying that out. It's not something comfortable to do and to get into.
What most people don't know is that you're married and you've got 2 fabulous children. We'll be chatting to your husband after the break, and we'll be finding out from him what it's like to live with the great Angela Makholwa. Coming up after the break, we speak to Angela's husband, Kwena Mwavelo. Do stay with us.
The serial killer is still behind bars. Still calls every now and then to say, hey, how are you doing? You know?
Calls you?
Yes, calls me.
Welcome back. You're still with Africa 360. I'm Duduzile Ramela, guest anchoring this special literary episode. Now, before the break, we were chatting to Angela Makholwa. We're joined now by her husband, and he'll be telling us a little bit more about what goes into her writing these crime thrillers. Thank you so much for joining us and for letting us into your home. Now, when actors go through preparing for a certain role, there's certain rituals that they do and there's certain things that they do. Let us into what Angela goes through when she prepares for before writing her book, or the process that she goes through when writing her book? What happens?
During the time when she writes, definitely she withdraws from us. Then I'm the only one who's left with the kids, and she'll be busy writing her books. And honestly, I don't see much of her during the time when she writes. You know, most of the time when I see her, that's when she gets to bed. But sometimes she'll wake up in the middle of the night and to go to the study and write.
So you sum it up as frustrating?
Not necessarily frustrating. I'm used to that. I'm too supportive on that one. I know it's a phase. You know, she'll write, the book will be published, and then she goes back to her normal life.
I see you making moves like you're disagreeing. You just don't understand here what's going on. Let us
completely disappear into a shell.
Let's hear from the horse's mouth. What happens when you go into your zone?
No, and it is certainly a zone, I must say, because, you know, at first you have kind of a very basic idea of what your story is going to look like. You know, you've got the plot, you know, this is what's going to happen, these are the characters. And you don't have a good sense of who each character is and what role they're to play in the story as it unfolds. But as you get into it, you know, you start to have a good outline of each character, and, you know, there are little caricatures, there are little habits and things like that. So that's when they take over. It's really like you need an exorcism.
You're possessed.
Yeah, you're possessed, because each one of them kind of assess themselves. You know, like for instance, Mzwakhe, the hitman in Black Widow Society. What kind of music does he listen to? You know, is he a smoker, a non-smoker? So all of that, it's a lot, because it's literally like people just living inside your head. It's a bit like madness because you've got people living inside your head. So it is a zone that you get into. And I suppose it is frustrating, I know, for him. Sometimes he'll say, oh, let's go and do this, and then I'll do it. But I'm not really in that task, because I'm thinking about these people, and I'm thinking, especially if you get hit by a really great idea that you think, oh, this is going to be fantastic. So you'll be sitting here having some wine and having dinner, and he's talking, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, oh yes, Mzwakhe would definitely do that and say that. And you're thinking, okay, let's finish up, because I want to go and just write up the stuff, you know, so yeah.
So when these characters take over, does it not scare you?
Not exactly. To be honest with you, I'm not scared. Like I said, that okay, I know in my mind, I'm programmed to see that she writes a crime fiction. And to me, it's not scary.
It's
it's like watching a horror movie. You know very well that okay, it's not happening.
But you're living in the house with the director of that horror movie.
I trust her very much, and I know that okay, nothing will ever happen to me. Something happens to me, she's the prime suspect.
So the world will know, because of the books that she writes, that, you know. Now, Angela, you spoke about the different characters that visit you at night. Does it not scare you when these characters come to visit you?
Oh, I think with Black Widow Society, because it's so far removed from my life, it was easier. You know, I actually had a lot of fun writing that book. I just, you know, kept on coming up with all these quirky little things that would happen, and there's a bit of humor. I hope there's a lot of humor that people can get in that book. So that one was a breeze. But with Red Ink, it was a bit too close to home. What happened with Red Ink was it started out as a biography. Basically, the book is about my character's encounters with a serial killer. She's a young journalist like yourself, and she'd written to a serial killer, you know, while he's behind bars, to say she's requesting to write a book about him. And then he contacts her. And then, of course, she decides to take up the project and is very excited. But as she gets to know the character, you know, weird things happen in her own life. You know, people start disappearing, people start getting killed. And, you know, she doesn't understand how this could be happening, because the only kind of malevolent force that she's brought into her life is this person, but he's behind bars. So for me, it was disturbing writing it. Even now, I struggle to read it. It's been reprinted. And as people come up to me and give me reviews about the book, oh, it's so amazing and so on, I try to go back and read it, but I can't, because it just terrifies me. And the reason, I suppose, is because it took an experience that I had to a certain level, it escalated it to a darker level. But it's, through fiction. So I don't know, it makes me wonder if that could have happened, because that person is still, the serial killer is still behind bars. Still calls every now and then to say, hey, how are you doing? You know?
He calls you?
Yes, calls me, because remember, I was writing a book about him. I'd visit him constantly. So yeah, so it is scary.
So you had a real encounter with a serial killer in red ink. Would you say then that red ink is fiction or it's fact?
It's
or a
fiction. No, it's completely fiction, because obviously the character has some similarities to me, but it's a fictional rendition of who I am, and even the serial killer. A lot of stuff some of the stuff that happens in the book did happen in real life, but I then took it to the extreme, just for the reader's entertainment, I suppose. So I'm safe.
So
it's fine. And he's safe where he is, so it's fine.
Thank you so much. We continue this conversation after the break. Now, after the break, we hear from you, our Africa 360 fans on Twitter and Facebook. Do stay with us.
I don't write, thinking, oh, I want a Nigerian to get it, American to get it. I just write to just appeal to the human story, just the human experience.
Welcome back. You're still with Africa 360 with myself, Duduzile Ramela, your guest anchor for the special literary episode. Before the break, we were chatting to Angela Makholwa, who wrote Black Widow Society, a gripping crime fiction novel. Now, Angela, just tell us a bit more about why you chose to shy away from, if I can call it, the so-called African element. Now, the women in your book use very creative ways of disposing of their husbands, like hiring a hitman, but it's a well-known secret that in Africa, people will visit your traditional healer to go get medicine to, give them that strength or to make a person disappear. Is there a particular reason why you shied away from that, whereas in your novels, it's more westernized, the forms of killings?
Actually, I did initially think about carrying out the eliminations in that way. But then the society would not, for me, have enough of a reason for being. Because if everybody just goes off and just, dispenses or goes to a sangoma or something like that, then why do you need a secret society? For me, I just thought it wouldn't have enough basis, just from a plot point of view, to be quite honest.
Well, let's take a look and hear from our Facebook and Twitter people, and let's hear what they have to say. Rafilem Chair says, sounds like an interesting read, such a relevant topic, especially in South Africa, where crime and abuse are a reality. What attracts Angela to the crime fiction genre?
I think I've already said that, I enjoy just the challenge of it. And I like what she's saying about, the domestic abuse that happens in this country. It was one of the issues I wanted to highlight in the book, because it happens almost on a daily basis. And women usually find themselves in those situations. They will tend to the police service, the police force, to kind of get an intervention. But usually they get very frustrated with that element of trying to find some recourse in that situation. And it's just kind of this vicious cycle. And the main story, actually, when I was researching those Black Widow stories, the real life ones, that actually did help me a lot in getting a good basis for this storyline, was the story of a woman, a woman who was married to a doctor, and she was so abused, and she was writing while in prison, serving time for having finally snapped and killed this guy. And the kind of things that she was recounting within the marriage, the kind of things that used to happen in that marriage are so gruesome that you really feel like you just kind of feel gutted by the kind of experiences that she had to go through. So I also wanted to kind of highlight that part of it, because that's like aside from the cloak and dagger, crime thriller, entertainment stuff, that's the real essence of what women out there are dealing with. And it's a reality for them, and it's not fun. They don't know how to get out of it. And I'm not saying they should kill their husbands, but what I'm saying is that, people do get pushed to a certain level that they don't even know what to do in that situation.
Women who snap.
Yeah, women who snap.
And then Tapuma Mangwera says, I picked up Black Widow Society and I couldn't put it down, something that we share. I wonder how the book is being received across the continent.
This is a good question. Well, the distribution is local in terms of my publishers. So there are still opportunities for it to be distributed outside. It's only been out in the shelves for, I think, 2.5 months now. So we'll see.
How hard is it to reach, to get into Africa and to get your books distributed on the continent?
I'm not really sure what the problem is in terms of from a publishing point of view, because my publishers, they've got a local imprint here, but then they also have a UK-based arm, and on the continent, I'm not really sure what the barriers are, to be quite honest. But I would love, obviously, to see my work going out there, and people are able to access it through online channels, Amazon, Kalahari. But the distribution itself of the paperback is not happening, and it is something that I would love to see happening in future.
What would you say to a girl sitting in Tanzania right now, looking at you and thinking, "Wow, I really want to write, but there's something holding her back"?
I think anyone who wants to write, in whatever part of the world that they're in, I know that there's always barriers in different parts of the world. We all have different things that kind of prevent us from doing what we want to do. But I think there's never been an easier and greater time to write as now, because you also have self-publishing. You know, and we also have online channels through which to sell your books. So not all of us have to necessarily go the route of getting a Pan Macmillan to package our books and market and distribute it. It's easier that way, of course, because you just are concerned with what you do best, which is just the writing. But because of the internet and because of the online media and what it allows us to do, and because the world has become such a smaller place because of global connectivity, you're able to actually, you don't really have an excuse in terms of access to resources not to write. You just need a laptop or some kind of a computer and internet access, and then you can be able to do that. So I think basically, first of all, don't tell yourself it's not something that I can't do this, you know, I don't know a publisher locally and so on. And then the second thing, of course, is to read as much as possible. I think you can't be a good writer if you don't read, because you won't know what kind of stuff that you're putting out. Is it up to par with what is out there in the world? So yeah, I think read a lot and write a lot. Write poetry, write essays, write anything until you feel that you're confident enough now to start actually putting together a manuscript.
Now, which are some of the African authors that have really inspired you?
Oh my gosh, I love this young woman. She's a Nigerian writer, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. I think she is phenomenal, and I think it's someone that we have to watch in future. I think she's just started. I mean, she's got 3 great books, but that I know of, and I'm sure she's going to be churning out some really amazing stuff. And of course, some of the classics, Wole Soyinka, Chinua Achebe. That's the kind of writing that really just kind of touches you, your soul. You are moved by it, and you just kind of feel this pride. You know, for this continent that we're in, that we have so much talent. And I think the best is yet to come for this continent. So I'm really excited, even by the new voices coming from all over the continent. It's really a great time, I think, for literature right now on this continent. And
talking about you and what's next in terms of the future, do you see yourself writing something that has greater appeal to the African continent?
Well, I mean, the books that I write, it's just normal people finding themselves in unusual situations. So I think those are human stories. So I think you don't have to be South African to have an appreciation for the storyline. I already think that these are books that can be accessible to anyone in the world and on the continent. And you've got characters, so there's characters that appear who are from different countries other than South Africa. So I think already I don't write, you know, thinking, oh, I want a Nigerian to get it, American to get it. I just write to just appeal to the human story, just the human experience. So, I think that's the best that one can do, basically.
Angela, thank you so much for your time. It was so insightful spending time with you. And now I have a better understanding of what goes into the psyche of a crime fiction writer. I hope
you're not too disturbed.
Not at all, not at all. Thank you very much, and all the best to you. Okay. Really, people should pick up a copy of Black Widow Society.
Yes, they should. Kalahari.net, Amazon.com.
There we go. Thank you very much for your time. That was Angela Makholwa, renowned crime fiction writer who wrote books like Red Ink as well as Black Widows Society. Now, Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie once said in one of her TED Talks that there's a danger in writing one side of the story. And as you heard from Angela, there's definitely a danger in not writing your side of the story. So Africa, go out there and do what you have to do. Until next time, it's goodbye.
Well, that brings us to the end of this edition of our program on that very literary note. And that was, of course, Duduzile Ramela bringing you that special episode on literature in Africa with author Angela Makholwa. Please tell us what you think when you like our Facebook page or tweet us at Africa360_ENCA. You can always send us an email at Africa360@enca.com. So until next time, when we look forward to bringing you Africa like you've never seen it before, do take care.